welcome to Out of the Box Healing. My name is Jessica. I'm a foot zone and quantum healing practitioner, and I am really passionate about personal healing and also assisting others on their healing journeys. I'm really thrilled today to have a friend of mine. He's a coach and a transformational coach, and his name is Dr. Robert Pope. And a little bit about Dr. Robert Pope is I met him a few years ago through a class that I took, and I've had the privilege of taking a few coaching sessions from him where he's really helped me in just unpacking some of the traumas that I've been through and working through unhealthy belief patterns that I've carried. He is the founder of Transperative Method Coaching. In recent years, he was also featured on ABC 2020 and Good Morning Utah. His work is life-changing. And again, I'm just so thrilled that you're here. Thank you, Robert, for coming today. Without further ado, Robert, would you just give a little introduction about yourself and more about what you do?
I thought you did a really good job with the introduction. Thank you, Jessica.
Yeah, you bet.
I guess the background, the doctor piece is that my background has been chiropractic. So I started practicing in 1980, and through the years, I think the doctoring, the healing work just evolved into a way that saw that there was a lot more than just adjusting the spine to make the real difference in people. And I think when you get down to it, I had to deal with thinking patterns, belief systems, energy patterns, energy flow, the relationship between the mind and the body, and all the things that has us work and the things that get in the way of our lives working. And the more I got present to that, I started to see really clearly that if we didn't upgrade or realign the thinking or realign the mind, then nothing really changes. And so I guess the greater work in the coaching is being able to interact with people in a way that I could help them as they help me see the different patterns that we operate in, the ones that are causing stress and the ones that don't cause stress, and how we evolve in our consciousness and we evolve in our awareness and our understanding. It's this constant state of upgrading, if you will. I see the example like a computer system. We expect our computers to be upgraded, our phones and our softwares and things to be upgraded continually. Yet sometimes as humans, we don't realize that if we're not willing to go through a similar type of upgrading, we will miss out. And I think energetically, the work that I'm doing now in coaching really has a lot to do with, I think, an ascension process, an awakening that's happening in humanity. We're just seeing things from a different perspective. The things that have been hidden in the background in our lives and in our society are being made known. And the internet has definitely changed how we interact and relate to people. And social media has dramatically shifted, who we are and what we present into the world. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you and have a conversation about what it is to be authentic. I mean, what is it to be a human being in the 21st century? And how we see life is so differently than my parents did. Definitely a lot differently than my grandparents saw the world. And yet, in a way, we're still in the same world, or we're on the same planet. But maybe it's not the same world because the way the world occurs to people is very, very different. And some of the things we'll talk about today may reference a little bit about that. And
yeah,
I just really appreciate having the opportunity to connect with you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for coming. So
Sure.
I'm excited to have this conversation. I agree the world is changing. There are so many changes happening on an energetic and spiritual level. And so I agree that like the work that you're doing is a process of helping people rise above and ascend. And so I think it's just really beautiful. Would you be willing to tell the viewers a little bit more about your life and what brought you to this type of work?
Wow, that's a good question.
Yeah.
so many pieces to that story.
Yeah.
I think the thread I want to pull on today is the thread of awareness that has evolved over my life. I'm from Utah, born in Utah County, born into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saint religion. I've been that's my foundation of my understanding of connections with God and relationship. It's been that understanding. And when I was young, the way I saw God, the way I saw religion, the way I saw service was consistent, I think, with what was, my friends and neighbors and, the people that I interacted with was very similar to that. And I remember having this thought when I was 12. It's like, I think we were studying Solomon, the wisdom of Solomon. And I remember having this thought, I want to be wise like Solomon. And as a 12-year-old, I think that was kind of an interesting thing that was aware. And I really didn't know what that meant or what it would take. And as life goes on, with high school and the things, the question was, what are you going to be when you grow up? What are you going to do? What do you want to do? And I was always like, I don't know. I don't know. It was this weird thing. I had gone on an LDS mission. I'd returned home, and now I was in that phase of kind of home. Now, what are you going to do with your life? And it was still, I don't know. And it was probably a few months after I'd been home. I was probably playing flag football or something, and my back was sore. And I was talking to my mom and dad. My mom said, "Oh, we're seeing a chiropractor down in Provo. Why don't you just come with us?" And I said, "Okay." So I went down and I saw Dr. Babb in Provo, and he was working on me, and he asked me that question. He says, "Now you're home from your mission. What are you going to do? What are you going to do?" And I just looked at him, this forlorn thing, my shoulders shrugged and got, I don't know. And he said this to me, "Have you ever considered being a chiropractor?" Mm-hmm. And Jessica, literally bells and whistles went off inside me. Mm-hmm. Like everything, like ding, 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 ding. And it was like, oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. Now, my grandmother had been seeing chiropractors on my mom's side. And so I was familiar with chiropractic, but I'd never really considered. When I went to I was in college, it was pre-med, and I was considering pre-med in education. I didn't want to know, I just wanted to take smart classes, things that, things would work. But that was like the biggest moment really for me in many ways, that this awareness. And I'll back up a little bit on a story, like this maybe take more time than we really want to spend on my story. But when I was 12, 13 in there, I was seeing a natural healer that my grandmother was seeing, and she recommended my mom take, because my mom was a little concerned because I seemed a little lethargic. I'd rather watch television than go out and play. She thought maybe something wrong. So anyway, she took me to this doctor. He was known as Dr. Stu. His first name was Stewart. And he told my folks, after he evaluated me, he told my folks I had leukemia. Mm-hmm. What he told me was that I had a problem with my spleen. I had 12, 13, I didn't even know what a spleen was. And it was like, okay. And he put me on this really interesting, this restricted diet. Now you imagine a junior high kid I'm the only kid now taking a sack of fruit as my lunch to school. I'm off sugars. I'm off most of the refined stuff. A lot of herbs and vitamins and glandular products, just different things. And so after about a year, I remember just when I was working with him, I was working, being there, and I had this thought: when I grow up, I want to be a stew doctor. Remember, and then I'd forgotten about that. I really had forgotten about that. And so here I'm now, we fast forward, and I'm 30, in my probably early 30, late, almost 30 probably. And I'm walking through my office, and I'm looking at a cabinet. I've got homeopathic remedies. I have vitamin minerals in it. I'm doing all this interesting, different kind of treating. And it dawned on me, it's like, oh my gosh, I became a stew doctor. And I guess maybe, how everything just kind of leads along the path. So how did I get into this work is I wanted to make a bigger difference with the patients that I was working with. And I was introduced to different integrative type of technologies and the relationship between the body and the meridians and the muscles, and then learned later on the energies systems, the chakra systems, the metaphysics of the mind and organ relationships, the thinking patterns, the processes. I learned an energetic integrative technology in the late 1980s that I became certified as an instructor, and I taught the technology nationally for 7 years. And just this eclectic, this background of things shifting. And then, it had this intention for my life to just be this, to continue to get better. And I was doing all this integration work and setting these big, powerful goals. And then my life started to fall apart. My marriage fell apart. My business fell apart. My life as I knew it fell apart. And I found myself living in New York. And the woman I was living with at the time, after 6 months, she looked at me one day and she says, "Get out. You're consuming me." It's like, what? And I had this sense that everything that I was like, I just felt like I collapsed. Like everything had ended. Everything that I knew, everything that I'd been, everything that I was doing just ended. And I had no idea. I had nowhere to go. I had no sense of that. And I got a phone call from a client. Literally, I'm a puddle of goo in the corner, basically. And my phone rang, and this client of mine called, answered, and he heard my voice. He says, "What's going on? What's wrong with you?" I mean, yeah, that's what's going on. And I told him what had happened. And he says, "Oh my gosh, what are you going to do?" And I did this thing again. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And he invited me to come out and stay with him for a few days. He's living out in the Hamptons for the summer. So I drove out there and spent 3 days with him. And on the third day in the afternoon, one point in time, he's okay. He says, "You've had some time now. What are you going to go do?" And I still looked at him. I don't know what I'm going to do. And he just pointed up the stairs. I was staying in an upstairs room. And he says, "Well, go figure it out." It's like I'm 40 years old, and like he's older than me. And he's like, I was sent to my room. Like, go figure out your life. And I'm sitting up there with a pen and a paper, listening. I'm listening now, trying to get guidance. And I knew how to connect. I knew how to do that. And I guess it was the invitation to go figure it out. And yeah, so I was in that, and I really had 2 clear options that came to mind. And one of the 2 options was to come back to Utah. I still could practice chiropractic here, and my kids were here, and it's a community that the voice said to me, "But don't go back to Utah County. If you go back to Utah, find a place in Salt Lake on the Upper East Side." Like, that seemed really specific. So I found myself, in the next few days driving back with all most of my stuff I could shove in my car, driving back to Utah. And on my way in, I stopped probably at Park City to get a newspaper and see if I could find a place to rent, and I found a furnished place to rent. Called them up, and it was up in Olympus Cove in Salt Lake. And by the weekend, I was living there, and that just put me on a completely different track. And I noticed within a few months, I was introduced to thinking from more of a oneness concept, a unity consciousness instead of a separation consciousness. Was into that plane, I was introduced to texts like the Course in Miracles, the work of Byron Katie, Eckhart Tolle's work, Donald Walsh's work on conversations with God, and just the perspective started to shift. And so I guess how I got here was by not knowing how my life was going to go next.
Yeah.
Listening.
Sorry. I always notice too, there seems to be just this common theme, amongst people that are in the healing industry, where there's always just a major rock bottom at one point, that brings them eventually to this type of work to help others. So, and share their wisdom of the things that they've learned through that.
Well, that's the whole point. The whole thing about starting with this idea of wanting to be wise, I didn't have any idea that wisdom came through a lot of experiences, a lot of tough experiences, difficult things to go through. There's so many moments when my life went what I would say terribly wrong.
Yeah.
At times I got in trouble, and times I got disciplined, and times that just, and then it was like, oh, well, if there's this moment, well, I'm going to go to hell anyway. I just, well, go out with a bang.
Mm-hmm. You kind of give up, don't you?
Well, it was in a way, give up what I thought I was supposed to do. And in doing what I thought I wasn't supposed to do, I experienced a connection with God that I never had known before.
Mm-hmm.
I felt a loving, unconditional, compassionate dynamic with the Creator, with God, with Source, that I'd looked for, all my life,
Yeah.
and experienced a little bit, but this was very profoundly different. And
Yeah.
and there's been so much more since since those times. I was in the late 90s and 2000s, the 2000 to 2020, the 20 years of a lot more, awakenings and deeper perspectives and deeper understandings, that as I've been able to go through all of that, I've been able to actually connect with people and relate to people from a place of, oh my, I get what it's like to lose everything,
Mm-hmm.
to lose all your belief systems and your connections with family and friends, and still find I'm always connected
Yeah.
in another way and come back. So
Yeah.
that's a long story, and that's.
No, I appreciate you sharing. I think there's a lot to be learned from people's stories. So I always enjoy hearing where people came from, and what got them where they are. One of the big takeaways that I experienced when I was doing some coaching with you is one of the things you taught me is that God is within me. And I think I always, my perspective of God was he's out here, he's in the cosmos. He's, um, it never was here. Like that was just such a foreign concept for me. And I remember you telling me that and thinking that sounds really nice, but I didn't understand it here on the heart level. And one of the things that I've been experiencing as I've gone through my own dark nights of the soul, and trying to work through my own challenges in my personal life, is that in those dark nights of the soul is there's an opportunity to connect more deeply to that God within. And I began through this process experiencing what you were sharing with me on more of a heart level. And so I was really interested in discussing this more with you. If you would be open to sharing more with the viewers about what is God within, and what are some other names for God within as well?
God within will have a lot of religious connotations, because that's mostly where we talk about God within. So, Holy Ghost, Holy Spirit, higher self is another way of relating to it. The light of Christ, Christ consciousness. There's, the experience of God within is peace. That's fascinating when you really get present. How do I recognize God within? Because the experience is peace.
Mm-hmm.
It's loving, there's joy. The experience is often recognized as inspiration. There's an intuitive nature to what it is to be a human being. and I say the word inner being or human being. I want you to get present to being. So the God within me is the being that God created me as an extension of God. It's like when the creator creates through extension. Sometimes the way humans create is we make something and we separate it apart from ourselves. The difference between what man makes is like something other than himself. What God extends is himself into creation. So it's always an extension of source. Mm-hmm. So to be connected with God is the most natural, most authentic thing that there is, because we could not be connected with God. If I wasn't connected with God, you weren't connected with God as the source, because as you see God as the creative source, you would cease to exist. The source of life, the source of your being, the source of everything. So how could I not be connected to God and have life and be aware on any way? So for me, connection with God is probably not the question that we're really answering here. The recognizing of our connection with God is probably a deeper point of view to look at. How do I know how do I recognize the connection? How do I recognize and utilize that connection in a way that actually has my life be extraordinary and filled with joy and bliss and peace and possibilities and excitement and adventure and abundance and all those things that is the very nature of what it is to be authentically what one is.
Yeah.
So,
and I think it's so easy to get disconnected. I think as children, we're born into this experience, and that connection is just there, right? It's inherent. And so what is it that, why do you think we often get so disconnected?
Well, I think on some levels, on one of the levels, there was an intention to actually maybe experience ourselves. It's like, say, if God wanted to discover it, if God wanted to discover what God is, then from one perspective, you could say, well, then the way to do that would be to pretend it's not God and look at God from that perspective. How do I know God? Sometimes by believing I'm not. So in that contrast, something can be distinguished, can be seen, and can be known. Or another way you could say it is the way itself is through discovering, through curiosity, through experiencing itself in many different forms, many different experiences, many different locations, many different patterns and frequencies. And so through the discovery process, through experience, you could say there's an aspect of God that I would say is existential knowing, but existential knowing is not the same as experiential knowing. Mm-hmm. So one of the greatest gifts that we offer, like say from this perspective, we offer back to God, back to creative source, is our experience. The gift is life. Our experience of life is the gift back, in a way. So can you experience wrongly? And that's a really interesting question. Is there a wrong way to experience? And no, I don't think there's a wrong way to experience, but you can believe you've done something wrong and experience the belief of doing something wrong. And that in itself is still another level of the experiential realm. We've heard it said many, many times, the only way to know light is to know dark.
Yeah.
The only way to know kindness is to experience unkindness.
Yeah.
So to have the experience in a world of duality that we're here, to experience it from that perspective adds a great deal of wisdom and a great deal of understanding and compassion. And collectively, all the different aspects of God are experiencing something uniquely different. There's, the way the world occurs to me is not the way it occurs to you.
Mm-hmm.
No two beings experience the same world. Our world is made up of a projection of our belief structures, our ideas, our identity, all the different aspects, our different biases, our different points of view, however you want to say it, all make up a very different world. So one of the things I coach people in is the idea that people always act consistent with the way their world occurs to them.
Oh.
And in their world, the situations they're dealing with occur to them very uniquely. That's why 12 people can watch an accident and have 12 different viewpoints, 12 different stories about what happened and why, and all those things in life. I think it's amazing that we agree on anything, given we have all these varying ways that we see through all the different lenses, you could say, that we look through. And belief systems become types of lenses that has our life seem the way it seems to be for us. So to have the belief system that I'm separate from God creates a very unique perspective, and one that's filled with fear, one that's filled with lack and loneliness. So, when we talk about, the who I am, the self here, you could say there's a personal self that believes that it's separate and alone and lacking. We sometimes refer to that as the ego mindset. There's the mindset, the belief structure that is founded on this idea of separation. And then there's the self with a capital S, the true self, that knows itself is in unity and oneness with God still. And I think the awakening that you're talking about, this shift and this change, is coming back into remembrance of who we truly are, which means we let go of the belief that we're separate, alone, and lacking. In other words, you could say it's ultimately about understanding that what we've made of fear, what we've made from fear of fear, is illusion. It's not real.
Yeah. You also go on to talk about how, though, that some of the things that block us are ignorance, judgments, withholding love, sin and guilt, disbelief, which makes a lot of sense.
Ignorance is a fascinating thing, isn't it? Ignorance. I think ignorance is it's really much more of misunderstanding. Like you asked, how did we get this way? We come into this world, we feel connected. We don't even know there's a separate self when we're little. We don't. There's just life happening.
Yeah.
And we get trained, we get taught, we get domesticated in a way, enculturated, we get indoctrinated. There's so many different words that describe this. We take on the prevailing beliefs of our parents and our culture and the society that we're a part of. We're told what God is. We're told what things are and what they're for.
Yeah.
When you were a little kid, you probably had those little books, and you would have to go, this is a dog, this is a cat, it's a horse, and it's a tree. And we were trained and taught what all these different things were, what their use was.
Yeah.
And then we've been relating to things as that's what they are.
Yeah. You mentioned how we see God as how God is for you, right? So yeah. So if he's a vengeful God, you're gonna, if you see him as a vengeful God, he's gonna be vengeful, right? In your life.
Not only that, but then I can be vengeful. If I think God's is a judgmental, vengeful God, then I believe I have every right to be judging others and taking out vengeance over there. And
yeah.
It's like, as long as I believe that judgment is the way, and condemnation is the way, then I will judge and condemn. And there's very, if I don't have a sense there's any God, if I don't believe in God, then I believe in something, but it's not that. And then I make the thing I believe in my authority. It's very hard for anyone not to have some kind of an authority perspective.
Mhm.
If I'm the scientist who disclaims God, just like does not recognize a God or a creative source or an intelligence or whatever that, however we want to talk about that, then science becomes the authority figure.
Yeah.
You can take anything about that, it's like whatever it is that you're connected to that you think is greater than you is whatever would be what your God would be.
Yeah.
And we've always had humanity's always had something. Nature, we made nature God, we made thunder God, we made lightning
Mhm.
water God. We made gods of many, 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 many things.
Yeah.
Whatever it is for you, whatever it is, if God's an angry, jealous God, then you'll probably be angry and jealous.
Yeah.
If you think God has favorites and loves one more than another, then you would choose what you love and then despite the other, and then you could justify war.
Mhm.
It's like, it's clear.
Yeah.
So whatever it is for you,
Yeah.
or whatever it isn't for you, you will act pretty much consistent with that. And that's one of the pieces of why life occurs the way it occurs. One of those factors in how life occurs is my cosmology. Would be for everyone, whatever their cosmology is, their life is pretty much consistent for them. How they behave and act is consistent inside of that. Whether it's aligning with it or rebelling against it, but it still has some aspect or dynamic inside whatever that occurs to one life.
Yeah.
And you've been around long enough to know that we don't all agree on everything.
You don't.
And the belief that we should becomes really problematic. That
Yes.
my point of view is the right one, and you should have my point of view. And if you don't, then you're my enemy, and I have the right to, harm you or ignore you or whatever we do.
Yeah.
And it's different. Okay.
Yeah. So there are different ways like that I've noticed when I start to feel that beingness, that God within and that connection. Some of the times, like it's just been really simple moments of like I'm out on a walk, or I'm up in the mountains on a hike, and I will feel just the most incredible feeling of just peace and love and that oneness that you're talking about. And I think to me, it's one of the most incredible feelings I think you can feel here. Um, I guess my question is like, how do we connect to God and strengthen that awareness so we can have that more often?
I guess mostly it's beginning to recognize when you are connected versus when you're not connected.
Mhm.
And sometimes the easiest way is to, how do you feel when you were sharing how when you're in the mountains and you're with nature, there's that sense of connection. And in that sense of connection, how do you feel? You said it was the greatest feeling, but what does it feel like?
Yeah, like how do you put language to it? It's peaceful. It's just a calmness and just a very like loving, like reassuring feeling. Like
Okay, good. Okay. So you get that sense. So in that moment there is that awareness of connection.
mhm.
Uh, Now the question is, what takes you out of that awareness? So what gets in the way of that?
Mm.
Um, so being able to distinguish connected from that sense of feeling connected and feeling not connected. One thing that I'm pretty clear of at this point in time, that fear is a separator.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm afraid, I don't feel connected. Or when I'm managing futures that are fearful to me, don't feel connected now. I leave present moment. I think we're only connected to God in the present moment. And I think the present moment is an eternal now. So it's always now. But in my thought system, when I get into a future and I have fearful futures, I don't feel connected. I worry, that gets there. Or like when I'm in the past regretting what I did or didn't do, where I'm suffering in guilt or shame. I'm in anger. I'm complaining. I'm gossiping. Those are the times when I don't feel connected.
Yeah.
Because I'm up here, like in my thinking mind. I'm up here in what I would say the busy egoic mind, the one that's concerned with all of the things of the world.
Mm-hmm. That's such a powerful and distinction. I totally can see that in myself as well. So
Yeah. So what if you weren't, see, for a moment, what if you weren't
mm-hmm.
in the future? What if one of my teachers said this. This is maybe many of your viewers recognize the name of Byron Katie. Maybe not. It's a wonderful. She's been just an amazing teacher, mentor in so many ways. She said there's three kinds of business in the world: yours, mine, and God's. And if I stay in my business, I stay here or connect, because here's where I connect with God. If I try to go out and try to connect with God, but leave here, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Mentally, if I leave here to go connect with God out there, then I can't feel God, because I'm trying to find it, like connect to it externally. Now, if I can feel it here and be out here the same, then I feel connected in both places. Mm-hmm. But she said about business, God's business, she said the future is God's business. What? Mm-hmm. What? It's not my business. It's like, really? My thinking is my business. So if I keep working with my thinking, and get my thinking right, if we will, get it out of judgment, get it out of complaint, get it out of all those things that separate from things. The connection's pretty easy.
Yeah. We feel how like the energy shifts so quickly. Just saying that, it's like there's just a freedom,
Yeah. So sometimes, how do I, from that perspective, then when I relax, meditation is a form of giving up the attachment to the thinking mind. I mean, the whole purpose of meditation is to let go of that. It doesn't mean it necessarily stops, but I don't have to try to manage it. It's a way of relaxing. And if I go deep enough, then there's that tremendous sense of oneness, the connection here. It's like right here, this moment. Just talking about it, it goes, whoa. Yeah. It's here.
Yeah.
So by relaxing, centering, letting go of my concerns and my fears of the future. Boy, that's been probably the biggest thing, is to begin to learn to trust that life is actually for me, not against me. I think I grew up with an idea that life was a test, like a school test, and you either pass or you fail. And that was always really scary to me. So when I let go of that particular idea and I saw life was an experience, and you couldn't really experience wrongly, you could experience the belief that you've done something wrong. That's really clear, but experience is experience, and all these things are really for our good. And if I could trust that life is for me, it was a willingness to relax more. And the more I relaxed, the more I felt connected to God. I could see that God and life were very much the same thing. Things are alive because God is life eternal. It's endless. It's life. Jesus taught that so many different ways. If I want to connect with God, if I connect with you, free of judgment, to just be in your world, to get your world, to see you, to know you, is the same as connecting with God, because God is there too.
Mm-hmm.
Learning to see God in everything and everyone, to
Yeah.
see the divine. I think that's our greater work.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what this is, isn't it? I think that's part of the ascension. It's coming to that level of love that you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. To see the thing in you is the same as that which is in me, regardless of race or color or age or gender or sexual orientation,
Mm-hmm.
or profession or religion or politics. To see that that which is looking at me is the same thing that's looking from here.
Yeah.
And that's deeply, deeply connecting.
Yeah.
How can you just sit and gaze into someone's eyes without needing to say anything? Can you do that without feeling weird?
It's hard, isn't it?
It
It can be hard. Yeah.
was in the beginning, yes.
Yeah.
There I am. There I am looking back at me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a profound moment. And to see it in our children, to see it in our friends, to see it in our mates, it's in all of our relationship, to see that, oh my gosh, it's all same. We're still all the same, very different perspectives. Yet that which is the eternal, that which is never changing, is still the same thing always. So connecting with God, how do we connect with God? Relax, allow, accept, surrender.
Yeah.
Accept, allow, accept, relax,
Yeah.
surrender. Surrender what? Surrender my ideas, my fears, surrender my judgments. Mostly surrender my judgments.
Yeah.
I think the moral judging thing that we've seen amplified, well, it's not, I don't know, it's always been around. That is the thing that keeps us not knowing we're separate, by judging someone else as bad or wrong, or ourselves as bad or wrong.
Yeah.
That moral judgment thing, I think, is really clear. Why Jesus taught, don't judge. Just don't do that. Because when you do, it's like what you judge over there, you have to judge here. But you condemn over there condemns you. What I condemn over there condemns me back. Say it that way. What I condemn condemns me back. What I judge is the way I judge myself. Because in many, many ways, when Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself, was it like a good idea? Or was there the deeper truth that your neighbor is yourself? And you got that deeper truth that we're all the same being. To love you as the love you are, the being you are, to love you for no reason, just because love loves, is an extremely connected state.
Mhm.
I can't love you or experience loving you and judging you simultaneously.
Yeah.
So what I'm really clear is judgment is the thing that blocks the awareness of love.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing there. So for me, I think the experience of God is the experience of one connection. It's always love. It's always love. You know, God is love. You've heard that. God is love. Sometimes when I was little, I thought, well, God is loving. That means God's loving, but it's still someone separate and far away and got a good view from a distance, you know.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
seemed hard. I wonder how I could hear my prayers. It wasn't loud, very loud.
Yeah.
I was, you know,
Well, I definitely think you have earned the wisdom of Solomon. So you definitely carry a lot of wisdom, and I appreciate your insights on this. One other thing you've shared is connection with God is your inherent birthright. It is the most important thing you can ever realize in this life, and it is your only real purpose. I really love that. I think that's so beautiful and so profound. So thank you so much for your time, Robert. Is there any final words that you would like to share with the viewers? And I will be sure to leave your information below so people that want to get a hold of you.
if I could leave you with anything, I would leave you with the desire to want to trust more, trust life more, which means relaxing and let life live you instead of you trying to dictate to life how your life should be. I know it's kind of antithetical to what we've been trained up inside, but there is within you a great, great love and wisdom that knows exactly how your life would be best lived in a way that would bring you all of your heart's desires, would bring you back into that awareness and that connection, that you trust that there is guidance within you as your very self that already knows your fears, knows your desires, knows what you want. And if you let yourself tune in and let that guide you, trust that, you would have the most extraordinary life. And you would never have to spend your life planning a future because you'd be receiving the very instructions to live into the future that you've designed from your heart. That is the thing that would fulfill you the greatest. So learn to listen a lot more, learn to listen deeply to that voice of love, that voice of guidance, that voice of truth, the one that feels good, the one that inspires you, the one that would be you if you would allow it to be you, because it's your higher self wanting to be you anyway. You would surrender into that, trust more there, and trust that there is that same being in everyone. And when you relate to the God within the one in front of you, relate to that instead of your fearful projections of them. You relate to that, you'll find the one in front of you becomes really kind and profoundly connected when you can actually love and trust. So that would be, I think, the greatest thing I would remind people of. You're not alone.
Yeah.
You're connected with all of life and all of source. And everything is given. Everything is given. Abundance is an ism. It's not an acquisition. It's a state of receiving. And the more you open and allow yourself to receive, not try to get anymore, not try to get, but to receive, the abundance of the universe will flow through you because that's your nature. And that's what we are. So trust is
Exactly.
essential.
Yeah.
The core, it's a child's trust.
Yeah. Oh, it's so
Yeah.
beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much, Robert. I appreciate your time. And oh, sorry.
I say anytime you want to connect, you can reach out.
Thank you.
How do people connect? Want to connect with me? Is that what you're asking? You can connect with me through the website, transperative.com, and you put a link on that. Transperative is a mashup between transformation and imperative. Transperative, it's this idea that now is the moment for your transformation. Now is the moment to choose differently, to choose connection rather than separation, to choose to love for no reason. Let go of your fears, let go of your concerns, and trust that life is actually going to bring you everything you need if you will stop interfering with it. And I say interfering, stop entering fear into the equation, because it distracts and distorts reality. And that's what we're moving out of, fear, back into love, which is oneness.
Yeah. Wow.
Think of it that.
So profound. I love it. Thank you so much, Robert. You have a
My
wonderful.
pleasure. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, you bet. Bye.
Bye-bye.